Is it possible to main Qiuyuan? Let's talk about it. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. So, I have recently become a Qiuyuan main, and I've invested quite a bit into him in order to make him my main DPS. As you and I know, he was designed as an echo skill damage support. He is really good for Frolova and Galbrina in that role, great character. However, let's say that you want to main him. Very understandable, look at the guy, he is really cool and really handsome. Well, let's discuss that, because that's what I've personally been doing and testing out recently. In terms of how much investment you're gonna need, it's unfortunately not really like a Brant and Yuno case, where you're able to play him as a main DPS at S0 and get results. You are going to want at least S3. S3 is the starting point in which you're able to play him as a main DPS. His S1 does help out with his personal damage because it gives him 20% crit rate for his forte heavies. That is nice, and that does make him easier to build, especially whenever you consider that his signature weapon gives him crit rate. I myself am still overcritting on my build, and I need to work on that. But he's still not really going to feel that strong before S3 in terms of DPSing. His S2 is mostly intended for Galbrina and Frolova, and then you get to his S3, which seriously enhances the amount of damage that you're going to deal. So, if you want to DPS him, you're at minimum going to ideally want his S3. Trying to DPS him before then is not really going to yield ideal results. So, going forward, we're going to be assuming S3 R1 investment. Okay, so how strong is he as a main DPS? Okay, personally, I am quite surprised by how strong he is from S3 onwards. Like, he is genuinely an impressive main DPS. His S3 just shoves him with a ton of multipliers, and he ends up doing so much more damage after that. And his ult is an absolute nuke. Another thing that I really like about high investment Qiuyuan is that his rotation changes a little bit. Basically, something that his S3 does is that after you do his first couple of forte heavies, whenever his concerto energy is full, you're able to use his skill, generate 2 more forte heavies, do a couple of basics to get the next forte heavy, and then you're able to do another cycle. Forte heavying all over the place. And oh my goodness gracious, he does so much freaking damage. And yes, this additional factor within his rotation does in fact account for an S0 Shorekeeper's ult time, so you're still able to hit enemies with the Ordained, and it's obviously not going to be a problem for anybody with S1 plus Shorekeeper. I also do think that this additional factor that's added to his rotation does help him feel more like a main DPS, and I do think that it was intended for his S3 to severely increase his own personal damage output, because it adds more field time to him, thus making him feel more like a main DPS, and he just melts down enemy HP bars. Like, here's the thing, he doesn't just feel like a main DPS, he feels like a good one. It doesn't really feel like you're getting some okay-ish DPS that's not exactly the best, but not the worst, it's just kind of in between. No, he actually feels like a properly good main DPS. That impresses me, he's actually quite strong at S3. I mean, you can see the performance yourself, it's not bad at all. Now, something I do want to add is that no matter how many sequences you get on Qiuyuan, it is generally always going to be better to get that amount of sequences on a character that was already intended as a main DPS from the very beginning. S3 does unlock his DPSing playstyle, and his S6 is very, very strong indeed, but getting that amount of investment on another main DPS character would honestly be better. However, as for Qiuyuan himself at S3 plus as a main DPS, he actually does feel strong. It doesn't even feel that weak. He is really easily able to take care of the upper floors. I've had literally no problem in the middle towers. Now, I will say this, the current middle tower 4, I haven't really been able to test on because it is so arrow resistant, but I did give it a go, and I still have improvements that I can make to my Qiuyuan build, and I was honestly not that far off of clearing it. Like, I honestly could have done it if I just had some better gear, and I had his stuff maxed out, because yes, somehow, despite the fact that I pre-farmed literally everything for him, I forgot to pre-farm his weeklies. I am waiting for Monday to drop so hard so that I can finish off his talents, because I have literally every other material prepared for him. It's driving me nuts, and I know that there is even more potential here. He is honestly really impressive. Now, okay, I will add here, don't pull him expecting him to clear arrow-resistant content, but I will say that I was still quite impressed with his performance on that stage, and on all of the other stages, he is absolutely mowing the enemies down. So I honestly have no concerns about his strength. Kuro definitely put all of his damage stock into his S3, and it doesn't feel like he's a weak DPS either. Now, is it more efficient to get an S3 Qiuyuan as opposed to just investing into a Cardathea and Shikona? Well, I mean, if you look at it in cost, obviously no, it's better to invest into other arrow DPSs that are intended as arrow DPSs. He's obviously stronger than Qiuyuan, but that's not saying much. And the teams that I've personally been testing with him are Static Mist Mortefi and Yuno. I find that Yuno is really comfortable to play whenever you're fighting an enemy like Hecate that moves around a lot, just because Yuno herself moves around a lot and she's able to shoot from a distance. And Qiuyuan himself, I actually find that as a main DPS, he's honestly really nice to play against those enemies that do move around a lot, because whenever he uses Forte Heavy, he just dashes towards the enemy and he does this crazy movement, so you don't really have an issue with that. His S1 also helps you out with getting interrupted. I basically never get interrupted whenever I play this guy. And I will say that the more invested your Yuno is, the better that she's going to be over Mortefi. However, if you're like me and your Yuno isn't really that invested and doesn't have Sig, a Static Mist Mortefi is actually going to help out your Qiuyuan's personal damage more. And because his personal damage is so good at S3 onwards, it is usually just going to be better to play Mortefi. However, Yuno is still a very good and viable option. And to be honest, I found that their clears are quite close. But whenever I finish optimizing my Qiuyuan, I do believe it's going to skew more in Mortefi's favor, because it's likely going to be more efficient to just fully focus in on Qiuyuan's personal damage. But like I said, if you've invested into Yuno enough, then her own damage is going to be able to compensate for that, and she is likely going to be better than Mortefi, but my Yuno just isn't really that invested because, well, I only got her at S0R0, and obviously I was saving for Qiuyuan at the time. But in my experience, both of them are good teammates, but I don't really think you should be pulling Yuno specifically for your Qiuyuan. It's honestly just going to be more efficient to invest more into Qiuyuan himself, obviously. But aside from that, Static Mist Mortefi is going to get the job done just fine. But if you happen to have an invested Yuno, then yeah, she's going to end up being a good teammate for your DPS Qiuyuan, definitely. But I do very much feel like Qiuyuan's own damage very much carries the clears. He is so freaking strong. He feels so satisfying to play. I really like his gameplay. His ult nuke is really satisfying. So cool, dude. So cool. But then we raise the question of, can he compete with other main DPSs when he's at S3? Obviously, we already know that if you put that same level of investment into other DPSs, they would be stronger, but we're talking about S0 R1 DPSs here. Is it worth turning your Qiuyuan into a DPS if you really care about him? He's the strongest DPS on my account, and I have an S1 R1 Zani. I think that answers that question. Yes, if you get an S3 R1 Qiuyuan, he's gonna feel like a high-tier DPS. I honestly find that he performs the best out of anyone on my personal account, but it should also be noted that my own account's investment is kind of all over the place, so take that as you will. But either way, he does feel like the strongest link on my account right now, and I do think that he is my best main DPS out of everyone that I've played. It's kind of tricky because, like I said, you can just invest this amount of investment into someone like Cardathea and just get more. But we're talking about Qiuyuan as a DPS here. Just if you're trying to play him as a main, is he as good as the other mains? Yes, he is, with room for improvement if you continue to pull his other sequences. And also with room for improvement if you choose to pull for S2 Shorekeeper and if you choose to pull for Yuno investment. It should be noted that I literally don't have S2 Shorekeeper, and I also don't really have that much investment on Yuno. There is even more potential for Qiuyuan to be an even stronger DPS here. He has a lot going for him. So, can he compete with the other main DPSs at S3? Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't mean to say that he competes with other S3 DPSs. I mean that if he is S3, can he compare to S0 Renacita DPSs? In my opinion, yes. So I wouldn't have any reservations about worrying if he's going to fall off really quickly or something like that. No, if you pull for him, he is going to be a really good arrow DPS for a long time. I don't think that he's going to be falling off anytime soon. I personally intend to main him for quite a while. I think his power level is perfectly sufficient. And the thing is, we already know that characters take a long time to fall off in wuwa. They do fall off. It is an illusion that they never do. Take a look at Shang Li Yao, he did get replaced by Augusta. It does happen. However, it takes a long time for it to happen, and those older characters are never fully left in the dust. So if you just really want to main Qiuyuan like myself, then don't worry. I personally think he's going to last for quite a long time, and any content that wants arrow characters, he is going to absolutely excel in. He feels like a really strong main DPS, his multipliers get really jacked up at S3, and I don't think you're going to be disappointed in his performance. I personally wasn't disappointed in his performance, I was quite impressed actually. He's honestly really strong. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a super worthwhile investment because it's a niche playstyle. If you're doing this and you're going down this investment path, you're doing it because you love Qiuyuan and you think he's really cool. Now, we already know that there's better characters you can invest into in terms of sequences and this and that, but if you're like me and you just really love Qiuyuan, can he be a busted DPS? Yeah, absolutely. I'm really impressed with his performance right now. And because DPSs last for a long time, I'm not really concerned about him feeling worse anytime soon. Carlotta still feels good on my account, and I still run her on Static Mist, by the way. Okay? Like, I wouldn't worry about it. The Renacita cast is basically timeless for the most part. For the most part, that will change someday. That will change someday. But for the most part, they are all very good still. I can't really name a single Renacita character where I look at them and I'm like, yeah, no, this one really fell off. Roshio was bad from the beginning, so she doesn't count, but even she ended up getting new teams. I'm very happy with DPS Qiuyuan personally. I'm definitely going to be playing around with it more, and I would say that if you love him and you're wondering, can I main DPS him? Absolutely, and it's not even going to be that bad. Quite good, honestly. The opposite of what you'd be thinking. Hopefully this video is able to tell you whether Qiuyuan can be a busted DPS or not. This has been Juice, signing out, and I'm off to go farm more aura with this guy.